Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. Dive deep into humane leadership crafted for today's fast-paced business world. Listen to our podcast on all major streaming platforms and join us as we explore the essence of humane leadership in today's dynamic business landscape. I'm Chris Olerking, a Fortune 100 IT leader, alongside Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader. Today, we discuss the pros and cons of promoting from within versus hiring for the role externally. Good morning, Roberto.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well too. And this question, and how to do this, big difference between probably big companies and versus startups that you're from. You probably are growing very organically. And for us, in big corporations, it's usually these kinds of promotion opportunities are due to reorganizations of the same group. So we probably have much different approaches to this.
Yes, we do. Actually, usually since a startup is a small bunch of people, when we want to hire, we almost never look up internally what we have as an asset, what we have as a team to for a new position. Usually, what we want is someone else to bring solutions maybe to the problems that we haven't faced or the ones that we have faced that we don't have the talent that could solve that. So yes, totally different.
Yeah, we have in really large companies, we're talking in excess of a total of 130,000 employees, but much different backgrounds, right? Those people aren't all in IT or aren't all in finance or aren't all in engineering. Um, but certainly you have a very large internal talent pool, and we had very rigorous resume systems and stuff, internal job posting systems that would allow you to really look at talent across many different regions and countries as possible hires for a new role that's opening up. So in this example, I want to kind of approach it from this isn't filling a role where someone quit or got fired or shifted roles. If we were creating a completely new team structure, even within your company, let's say it's growing, you've sold a lot, and now you're gonna expand the team, and maybe you need to divide it up for some reason, and therefore you need additional leadership. So for us, I'd say in general, we would certainly give internal candidates a very fair opportunity to hire for this. I think the pro is that when they come in general, unless they're from a completely different organization within the big company and they don't know anybody, they're able to come in and know people right away, know how things operate, know the contacts, so they know both the official way things operate. And of course, within all companies, there's also, certainly in big companies, there is the unofficial way things operate. You call a contact or a personal business friend to help grease the skids of getting something done, to help things go smoothly. So you personally call them and make sure you're all on the same page to get something done. There can be benefits too, just like you said, from the outside, that if you bring somebody in from the outside, they're going to try things from a different perspective. They want to bring in fresh ideas, but unfortunately, they may not understand in a large company the bureaucracy, the systems, how you get approvals done. Usually, you can't do much in a big company without a lot of layers of approvals, no matter how independent you are coming in from the outside with your fresh ideas. Once the budget is set, in January, you're not going to come in May and get a fresh $2 million approved to do anything. It's just not going to happen because it's out of budget cycle. So I can see there are certainly benefits of internal hiring versus bringing in that outside candidate in both companies. My general feeling is in a large company, promoting from within should usually be favored. In other words, let's say you're going to promote somebody from within and that leaves a gap then for something else. Everybody gets to move up, hopefully through that cycle. And because you have a large talent pool, they're pretty good, darn good candidates. And again, you don't lose any cycle time in terms of getting them up to speed on processes and approval methods and things like that within your company. So most of the time, I'm going to favor internal hiring.
Yeah, I agree with you, but let me tell you, why do I think people in large companies, even though I haven't been in that one for maybe 26 years ago, I haven't been in that kind of companies, but I think when we are stuck maybe in a specific department, our bosses, our leaders might see it that we have been too long on this one. And what we want or what they want is someone to be the other side of the coin, total different mindset. And the problem with that is that their thoughts are biased, not unbiased. So maybe if they think, okay, I will bring someone from the outside, but in order to be a good competition, what I will do is to let someone internally to apply, not only apply for this position, but to create maybe a business case or something, new ideas. We don't know. Usually, boss and leaders have biased comments and biased mindsets, and they say, "Okay, Chris is an amazing guy for this kind of position or this kind of problems," but they wouldn't let us be apply or have this competition. They don't know. And the problem with that is if they don't let us compete with that, they wouldn't know if we are really lame or we are outstanding, man.
Yeah, certainly, I can see the pros and cons, from our side and on the large company. Sometimes it is, internally, you don't even know that there's somebody in another division. Again, let's use IT as the example. Each huge sections of the company have IT departments. They are coordinated across the board, across a corporate level IT, but sometimes you may not know that you have someone with talent in another area that has a lot of experience with things. So, certainly I think as humane leaders, we want to have a very wide view of the candidates that we interview, both internally and externally. And we need to think about certainly what is going to make this person in this role most successful. There are going to be occasions where I think the thing that's going to benefit the company the most is completely fresh point of view that hasn't been influenced by the history of the company. So, I was coming from a company that had been in existence well over 100 years. And if you had somebody that had grown up in that environment from the first day they started their first, real job, they started there and had worked through that company all that time, and it's now 25 years in, they have been influenced by how that company's culture and how their thinking and solution problem solving works. And to really have true out of the box, is the cliche, right? Out of the box thinking and not be colored by past decisions, you'd have to go externally, right? Because this person would not necessarily approach things in a fresh perspective. They could, but they might not. No matter how much external reading they do, no matter how many external seminars and conferences they go to get outside opinions, the hiring team may still feel, nope, this person with 25 years in the company just cannot break free of the thinking of the company, and therefore we need to go to the outside. The con of that is that, as in my own experience with a large company, the new person comes in and is very frustrated right away because they want to do things like they did it in a smaller company or other companies they were in, and the processes that the big company has says, look, you got a nice idea, but it's got to go through committees, it's got to go through architectural review board, it's got to go through standards and conformance, and it's got to go through this and that. And that new person from the outside, yes, they're stifled by the same things the internal candidate would have been stifled for too, right? They both came up with this great, unique idea to solve the problem, but the person internally is used to the bureaucracy, let's call it, to use a negative connotation to all those processes. And the new candidate, they just can't tolerate that kind of bureaucracy. Now, the bureaucracy is there for a good reason. It's to control budgets. It's to ensure that people don't install and start things that aren't going to be supported in the long term, that they aren't in conflict with the strategy that the big corporation has. Hey, your solution's great for that one little problem, but you don't realize that there are 5 other divisions of the company that have that same problem, and your solution to the problem doesn't solve it for the other areas. So sometimes you have to consider, how is your candidate going to function in the environment to bring these new ideas to fruition and to success? And sometimes you have to realize that your company's culture is an immovable object. Culture in a huge company moves very slowly. And will your external candidate fit into that culture? And if they can, and they can work within the bureaucracy and make things happen, then they are the best hire. Bring them in. I actually had observed in my experience where they had done some hiring from the outside, and the external hire didn't even make it 2 years before they left the company, because while they had good ideas, they just could not navigate the large company environment, right? They came from a smaller startup environment. We were hiring because we wanted new and innovative ideas, which all companies want, but all companies don't implement new and innovative ideas at the same speed, at the same scale, through the same types of approval processes and reviews of solutions. And while this person had good ideas that we certainly did listen to and eventually implemented, we didn't do it at the rate or the way that this person wanted to do it. And so they left, and we had to continue to hire. I don't remember if we ended up doing another external hire for that role or not. In a large company, you reorg so frequently sometimes that you kind of lose track of how solutions and things intertwine with org changes. We probably did a significant reorg every 3 to 4 years. So you have to kind of think of things in the big picture in a big company, over decades versus just over a 2-year window. But the bottom line is, your external hire versus internal, you have to weigh which is going to be the bigger handicap to this person's success. If this person you're hiring from the outside, if there is a big burden of how your company operates and approvals, and you don't feel that the external candidate can navigate that as well as the internal candidate, it may be the internal candidate is the better choice for you.
Yeah, I totally agree that any new candidate that comes to a well-known company or to a startup has to blend in. They don't have to be like water and oil, to be apart. They have to blend in. And in order to achieve that, what I think that people has to do is in 2 months' time. The first month, you have to listen for ads and talk 1 ads. And the second month to be the opposite, to talk 4 ads and listen 1 ads. And with that in mind, you could learn everything. You could learn that maybe the speed that you have worked before doesn't blend into the new company, or maybe it could be the opposite. Maybe there is this candidate who was from a well-known company go to a startup. It is like an elephant running versus a dolphin swimming. You cannot think that. So in order to blend in, you have to be really aware of where you are, not where were you, and to do stuff as in the culture allows you to, as in the kind of company you are in. And giving maybe an example would be maybe someone who used to work in Coca-Cola might not be the same in Pepsi, even though there are huge companies that sell the same product, but they have different business rules. So you have to identify where you could do stuff and where you shouldn't. Let me tell you, let me give you something. Like 10 years ago, no, like 7 years ago, I was interviewed in a bank by a fintech guru who used to work at startups. And this guy was hired because at that bank wanted to have all this fintech stuff into that bank. So he was paid a lot. He was an amazing position, a VP position at the bank. And he couldn't bring projects to the bank, and he was fired 2 years later. And it was that because he was thinking only at a startup, and his mindset wouldn't fit on into the bank because he was a huge bank. I don't know how many employees, but they had a lot, maybe 5,000 branches across whole Mexico. So it wasn't like that. He couldn't do the same stuff he was doing at the startups he used to work for.
Exactly. He can't, you can't take the same security risks. You have to get solutions that would scale big enough for the bank like that. Exactly. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you are so stick to yourself, not to yourself, but to the industry or the kind of companies that you have worked before, it will be really, really difficult to blend into another big company. So in order to do that, that's why you have to listen. Do not talk, hey, we're going to implement this and we're going to do that. No, no, no. Hold your horses, man. Be aware where you are. See what is the speed? Is there going to be haste or not? Is there going to be maybe before you had to release an email and stuff will be done? No, maybe you had to get approval from your manager and the manager and your manager to do stuff. So that's why people who are so stubborn, let's say, and won't see what's going on, maybe they have these blinders, won't act as they should be.
Exactly. And I think as humane leaders, we need to consider, let's assume that we're doing this hiring decision, right? We also need to consider at the stage we're at in our career, what's going on from a project perspective, what our next 1 to, let's say, 5-year strategy is for our own career and the company. How much time do we have to help this new position? So, for example, again, we might say on paper to HR, we want new and innovative thinking. We want, to bring new solutions, all these kinds of generic words. But in realizing me as the humane leader, the reality is we're so understaffed right now. Maybe there's been an economic downturn for a little bit. I'm doing tactical work and leadership work. If I realize that, I'm really only going to be able to spend an hour or two with this person per every 2 to 3 weeks, or maybe even in a month. Well, if you can't spend much time helping this new leader, new hire be successful, going to the outside in a big company will be a complete disaster because they need so much more coaching on how the processes work. How do you get approvals? How do you get funding? How do you do things? Because there's not a really good written, even though processes are documented in big companies, it actually takes a fair amount of teaching to make an employee successful in a large company. So you got to be honest with yourself. Yeah, I want this outside perspective and I want somebody who's going to try and break through our problems. But the reality is I have no time to spend with this new hire. Once they come in, I'm going to spend, a few hours with them the first couple of weeks. And then after 2 months, they're on their own. They got to be successful. And I'm just going to meet with them once a month. An external hire, it's extremely unlikely they'll be successful in that situation, no matter how self-aware they are, like you're saying, to observe everything from the outside. So you also, you have to think about this internal, external decision, both from what are you trying to get the candidate to bring to the table, but what are you as the humane leader going to do with this person who gets hired into that role to be successful? In a large company, if I hire internally, I don't have to teach anywhere near as much about culture, approval processes, the budgeting, all these complex things it takes to be successful, right? Versus if I bring somebody in from the outside, I've got to spend a fair amount of time, even though processes are documented, I got to spend a fair amount of time teaching them how to be successful. And, so you have to do kind of balance that perspective too. And if I don't have the time to help them be successful, I probably need to lean into hiring internally more than externally. If I do have the time and I know that, hey, I'm new in this role, I'm going to be in this role for the next 3 years. So therefore, this new candidate I'm bringing in, I'll be able to mentor them for the next 3 years. Hey, external is a really good option. If I'm buried with work, I don't see in the next 2 years that I'm going to get much free time, I'm not going to have much time to mentor them to be successful. I probably then lean towards that internal candidate who can hit the ground running, has other avenues for mentoring just through their own personal channels of being at the company already. Again, every situation is unique. Every company is unique, just like you're using the Pepsi Coke example. Somebody who's very successful in Pepsi could be a complete failure at Coke in the exact same role.
Yeah.
So a lot of it depends, and I would suggest, that humane leaders think about these topics that we've had, but are you leveraging your coworkers in the place to think through this? And I don't mean HR people, because HR people are going to take the company perspective of, hey, if we hire somebody internally, we got to pay them more, that might cost us more money. So in general, I don't involve HR in these kinds of thought processes. I just want to bounce ideas off my peer like you. What do you think? I'm looking for this kind of role. My company's like this, it, because we've been friends for years. And even though you aren't in my division, what do you think? That's very valuable for that leader to make the decision and help weigh what are the pros and cons of that internal versus external. And there are certain times when I'm gonna give 10 more points on the interview scale to external versus internal, and there's other times I'm going to penalize the external because they don't know the processes. It kind of depends.
Yeah, totally agree. And to add this, when we are at a startup, we understand that we are a hands-on people. That's it. Regardless of the department where you are, regardless of the position, in marketing to do some queries to understand what's going on with the campaigns and operations guy to understand that maybe they're going to carry on the inventory to one thing, to one place, to another one. People understand that we are hands-on. So when we are a startup, we understand that anyone could do this something that they're not expecting to another department or another person to do stuff. We understand that. And that's why when we hire internally, that I have seen very, very few times, unless we are a startup of maybe 1000% that we know that we could do it. But if we are in the pre-seed or seed stages, it's going to be really difficult. That's why we always have to ask during the interviews, hey, are you a hands-on guy? Are you a hands-on gal? If they say, heck no, I'm going to direct people, that's a hard no. That person is not going to be hired. But if they say yes, it's going to fit into the culture. And I think it will be the best for a well-known company to understand that. Maybe you're going to say, oh, if I hire internally, it's going to be more expensive. Nope. It's going to be less expensive because, as you mentioned, they know the processes, they know what to do, what not to do. They understand the whole momentum and the whole inertia of what's going on. So I think hiring internally in a well-known company is going to be better. And I think that's why we as human leaders have to guide our team members. If they have the power to hire someone, push to say, okay, let's have this balance. Try to hire more internally. That's because if you do that, people will see when their results come, they might hire you for internal position at the future. If you do the opposite, and if you lead by example, people will do otherwise and they will hire outside. What do you want to have? And people will try to do that.
Yeah, I mean the long-term strategy for larger companies has to be people need to see a career path. And if too frequently you only hire from the outside and don't promote from within, the employees will sense there's no career path. Yes, I have a job. It may be secure. The company's very successful, but I'll never get promoted because they never promote from within. So there is that factor too, that you've got to balance in every time you're thinking about doing hiring. The humane leader has to take into account all these factors, plus I'm sure many more that the audience can think of, but you're making a conscious decision to think about what's the impact of hiring somebody into this role, whether they're familiar with the company because they're an internal candidate or they're external, and there are benefits and, pluses and minuses to both. I've certainly, when I've been hiring into positions, I've looked at it from both ways, but the humane leader needs to think about how does that impact that person they eventually make the decision and hire. Are they going to be successful? Which candidate would be more successful? And it's, again, in a large company, I've found in general, an internal candidate will be more successful than an external candidate because it just takes too long to learn new processes. That doesn't mean never hire from the outside. It just means in general, you don't want to hire externally when the role demands a high degree of integration into the company's culture. If you can hire somebody in from the outside and you've got a lot of time to mentor and teach them, an external candidate can bring a lot to the team and can bring a lot to the company, and they can be successful. But it's on the humane leader to make that judgment call that they've got the time to help that external person be successful.
Indeed. Nice. Great, Ben. I think with this, we should end the episode, but this topic is going to be for the talk by us in the future.
Absolutely. It's a big one.